Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Tim Kinman on the line, and he is Vice President of Systems Digitalization at Siemens Digital Industries Software. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam. Happy to be here.
All right, Tim. So we have a big topic today. So really how product complexity can really be a competitive advantage through digital transformation. And I know digital transformation is a big deal, and it's one of the things that you and your team are helping companies with. So we'll definitely get into that. But before we do, we'll start this show the way that we start them all with our Mission Matters Minute. So Tim, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Tim, what mission matters to you?
Well, Adam, there's an explosion of complexity going on all around us, and we see it every day. We've been growing it every day, and a lot of that's around the product demands and the innovation behind it. So smart connected products is a good example. The need to have integrated work process working across engineering disciplines. Companies are in some ways lagging behind the product demands, and we have this connectivity around IT and OT convergence. So the whole approach that we're after is how do we turn that into a competitive advantage? And how do we do that by taking traditional approaches that have largely been technology oriented and really bringing in the process innovation, the people innovation for a more holistic approach. So our mission is all about how do we help customers through this digital transformation for smart connected products?
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the line because Siemens, big company. I'm sure everybody watching this has heard of them, and what you're doing around digital transformation. It's kind of like we get to peek behind the scenes, right, of what's going on,
Yeah.
and maybe even get into some companies and to some things that you've done to kind of put some to shed some light on the topic. So good times. So just to get us kicked off. I'd like to go a little bit further, just maybe into your background and just get a feel like how you got started in business. Like, how did you get started on this path to really helping companies along at Siemens?
Well, funny enough, I came out of university as a comp sci student and then went on to business school. So I kind of hit the shores right as a lot of things were taking off. It was at the launch of Windows, right? So at the beginning of the internet, I was in the early days of software development as it was just taking off, and spent about the first half of my career doing R&D, software development delivery. Mm-hmm. And about midway through, I did a pivot and I started getting more focused on customers and how could I help customers apply the technology to help them transform the way that they work. Mm-hmm. And as I've gone through that, the complexity is going up. The cross-domain elements have gone up. So it's really walked my way into systems engineering and how we're helping them address those cross-domain system engineering type of challenges.
Awesome. And it's exciting to see, in my opinion, just where we're at right now with connectivity, digital transformation, and what's possible. Because it's all around us now. And to see where we'll be going, forward into the future. I feel like you have just a unique vantage point. What excites you right now about this whole idea of connectivity and just like what's possible? Like what excites you?
Well, there's a famous quote that came from about 10 years ago is about software is eating the world. And it really still applies today. And the kind of challenge we're dealing with is just the pace. The pace is nonstop. And it's the pace of technology combined with the pace of the consumer demand. And then we have all types of government regulatory things that are trying to tailor or address some of the societal elements of how can we be more productive? How can we improve people's life?
So I want to start this conversation as we go further into really thinking about, or maybe have you define like the idea of digital transformation as it relates to what people are going through right now. Because I feel like, I know a lot of business owners and executives will watch this, but and they hear this term pretty often, like digital transformation, or, we have to do this, we have to do that. But like, what does it mean from your purview?
Well, let me come back to the business elements and give you a few things to think about. I think, when you look at all the analyst information that's out there, I really distill it down to three main areas that are occurring. One is around the changing business models, and there's a mantra that says disrupt or be disrupted, and this is really forcing business to think about the products and how they bring them to market. And as an example, today we have 50 billion connected devices globally. That's 6 times the global population.
With the B, 50 billion, you said.
50 billion connected devices. And they're projecting, this goes from the sensor elements of, a connected device means I have some kind of sensor, it's communicating back to some kind of cloud-based. And with those 50 billion connected devices, today, there are 1 trillion network sensors out there.
Wow.
Listening and bringing this information back. And those 1 trillion sensors are expected to go to 45 trillion in the next 20 years. So that gives you this projection of the incredible pace of connectivity that's anticipated in the market. And, there's other examples. Automotive is another good one in that they're showing an automotive as making transition to electrification and connected that 90% of new auto innovation is coming from software alone. So there's just this huge explosion of data complexity, the connectivity to the cloud, cybersecurity is a big deal. So product companies that in their evolution are becoming software companies, and software companies are stepping into traditional product business. So one of the key drivers is just the complete disruption of the business models.
Can you give an example of that, maybe just that you've seen, whether you've worked on or it's just a common example that's out there of that transition kind of happening?
Well, automotive and mobility is a good example. I mean, there's the historic examples of bordered bookstores went away and Amazon consumed the world.
Yeah,
that's one of the most obvious. The other one is about automotive, right? Mobility is the evolving service, and Uber, Lyft, those kind of companies hit the scene and offering mobility as a service rather than taxi or car ownership.
Yeah,
and that's moved further into this whole element of where are we going with transportation generally. And, there's a lot of things going on about autonomous vehicles, but there's also a buying trend about fewer people and the younger generation are purchasing cars. They're more moving to mobility as a service. And that's one of those examples where tremendous disruption is going on.
yeah. Completely get it. And so there, if somebody's on the product side and they're thinking about, their transition and vice versa, like if somebody's on the software side and they're thinking about like what it looks like to enter the market and with different lineup, like what are some of the things they should be thinking about? And I don't want to oversimplify that, but I feel like for context, everybody watching this, we're recording this in February of 2022. So a lot of shift, a lot of pivoting going on, a lot of transition, we'll say, for many types of companies to either stay afloat or to just progress. So I just want to say that for context. But what should product side, if they're thinking about going over to maybe to the software side a little bit more, right, and vice versa, like what are some of the things they should be considering?
Well, the one challenge is the workforce. We're still in the back end of COVID, and work from home is now the norm. And so this distribution of labor, but at the same time, this pivot from I'll call it traditional product company to a software company means that you need more people in your workforce that are doing software development. And some statistics around that, right? Today, 160 million software developers in the world, and that's 2% of the population, but the 160 million is a big number, but still needs to grow by 24% over the next 7 years. So we're in this explosion of demand of software engineers to keep pace with what the demands are of the industry. And in that pace, there's also this other element of cyber. And that just, and a lot of the liability around software today is the cyber attacks, but there's over 3 million professionals focused solely on cybersecurity. And so to stay profitable in the business you're in and to kind of transition to this software company means that you're going to go through a retooling of your workforce, and you're going to have to shift and retool while trying to keep your business profitable, but shift to remote workers as well as while you're shifting to a different percentage of software engineers in your workforce.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that, because I feel like companies, I know you work with, large companies, middle market companies, and we'll get further into that, but companies of all sizes. So when I look at Mission Matters and kind of some of the discussions we've been having, it's like what our like workforce looks like in the next couple of years, and thinking about the back end, and just like, okay, we're going to need to do a pretty heavy tech build out if we want to stay competitive as a media company. Like, you have to be evolving. And when we look at the complexity, like just the thought to think that at some point we may have more, engineers or more people on the development side than writers for a traditional media company, I feel like it's a switch, right?
It's a switch. And, part of it is that there's a certain skill set of writing code, logically structuring code, but we're also moving into kind of a different skill set, what's called low code. And so low code is going to allow people who are more, let's say it's like a PowerPoint, and people who know low code are going to react into that. But the point is that you're bringing it down to a more of defining an experience and have code generation going on behind the scenes. So, in order to expand this, we're going to probably have some kind of layered approach where we have people that are building out more of the technological elements of the connectivity and the mainline business logic. And we're going to have another layer of people who are going to build out user experience. They're using techniques like low code or other types of approaches like that.
So taking a step further, so we know, we've talked about the changes happening, right? Workforce is happening. The complexity is not going to necessarily decrease. It's possible it will increase just with the amount of connectivity and the other things that you've just laid out. So now, like as a business owner or as an executive running a company, like how is that possible to maybe turn that into a competitive advantage?
Yeah, I think the elements that we're going to deal with here is that getting started, because a lot of the challenges that we're dealing with is that it's always the fear of getting started, but you also have a fear of being left out, right?
Yeah.
And so the main part is you have to start somewhere, and you should start with the core competencies that you have today, and then begin building out a digitalization strategy around that. And maybe some things that deal with how do I shift from physical prototype, the test elements of downstream, how do I move that earlier? And how do I take advantage not only of eliminating the high cost of failures and repair late in the cycle, but how do I move that forward so I can generate more ideas? I can generate more opportunity, more alternatives that better fit what the market demands are. So you have to be thinking about applying digital transformation in such a way that it is going to help you make those decisions earlier and fail faster, so that you have a lower repair cost and that fail faster, and more, I would say, more nimbly go after that market demand.
Mm-hmm. Is what we're seeing now, would you argue it's very different, or is this kind of like some of the digitization that's gone on in the past? I mean, in the span of your career, as you mentioned, like when you started or when in your career, that's when the first Windows-based system was online, was offered. So, I mean, a lot has happened since you've been in the software industry.
Right.
Like, is this a kind of like a progression, or another step to this digital transformation in your eyes, or is it just kind of a continuation?
It's a exponential curve. It's going faster at a steeper pace. Historically, I lived through the drafting, 3D modeling, mechanical type of digitalization, and all of that was around how do I meet and build structural things? How do I build physical things? And there was tremendous productivity gains in doing that. But now what's happening is that a lot of that value is moving to software. And it's moving to electronics. And those things are not always things that are following the same laws of physics. It's not a structural thing. It's a thing that's defined by behavior. And so what we're doing is we need to connect the virtual to the physical. And that's a lot of what our digital twin technologies are all about. How do I have a virtual representation of the product that I release out the door? But also then in that virtual, how do I start using that for predictive analytics? How can I use those models so that I can start thinking about what I want my next generation to do? And it's going faster because the faster pace is now I'm moving into areas where I have to define the operational ability of the product. So that means that what used to be the human behavior has moved to software. And because, the human mind is a complex thing and it can intuitively make decisions and trade-offs instantaneously almost. So now I have to build that into software logic, and I have to be able to model that and mirror that and marry that to the physical product that it's driving. And so I think that's the big change that's going on right now in this whole area of model-based system engineering, is being able to model that behavior early, so that what we want that system to do, that product to do, is now taking over the human behavior, and I have to be able to measure that, test that, and verify that so that it actually will meet the needs of the customer, but in a safe and predictable way.
And it seems like to me, like, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a really exciting time, because people that are the companies and the industries that can get this model-based system engineering right, it seems to me like they can really make you said that exponential curve in terms of the pace that things are moving. But, in theory, it seems like people that get it right, they're really going to be able to accomplish some unique things. Am I off on that?
They're going to have an ability to make more choices. They can have trade-offs earlier virtually. So if you're thinking about different market-based opportunities, but you also have to think about how I can address that with a product, now I can evaluate multiple options virtually faster, so that I can then connect that to what option provides me the best fit to the market needs, what is the most feasible, the most cost-effective, and it's something I can deliver. So you get the foot up, the leg up, by being able to have a higher volume of choices early in your decision process.
Yeah, that's great. And, I'll pause here for a moment, because I do want to give maybe some examples of that. I know you do a lot of work in automotive, industrial, aerospace. I know Siemens works in many industries, but I know those are some of the big ones. But before we go further there, with maybe some case use examples, tell us a little bit more about Siemens in general and exactly what you do and what you work on, just to kind of pause for a moment.
Yeah, and I'm part of Siemens and the digital industries part of Siemens, and we're really working on this whole digitalization journey, from the smart, lean digital factory, but also connecting to the products that are being built, that either are being built for the line of production, or the products that are being designed that will be built for production. So both of those things go together. And really what we're doing within this activity around Siemens Accelerating Digital Twin Technology is helping customers turn today's ideas into tomorrow's product and tomorrow's experience. And all this requires that we drive this transformation across the digital enterprise, from the initial concept through the mechatronics, the engineering, all the way through manufacturing, and all the way through the performance, meaning IoT. And we're able to connect all that information together digitally through the engineering lifecycle, but also capturing that information as it is performing and feed that back into engineering for further updates.
What are the types of companies that normally get the most value out of working with Siemens in your team? So is this for enterprise only, middle market? Like, give us maybe a complexion of what that looks like.
It's really many industries. We live in areas of complexity. We have customers that are doing, like I said, production line builds. We are a company that focuses on a digital twin technology, from the design of the product to the defining the production techniques virtually, all the way through understanding the performance. And examples, I'll give you some examples that are maybe close to home. There's a company called BioNTech. It's a company based out of Germany that ramped up and was able to bring COVID vaccine production online within 5 months rather than 1 year. And what they did is they used our manufacturing execution systems to allow them to accelerate that, because doing it digitally and virtually allows them to move to a paperless documentation for production, and that got them through all the certification process much faster. So that's a real example in the world we're in right now, is that how do we help this customer move from a traditional 1 year cycle to a 5 month cycle using our digital twin and our accelerator technologies?
And you said, 5 months versus a year. So when you think about just cost, man hours, speed to market, I mean, is there a metric there that doesn't necessarily, kind of benefit? Like, it sounds to me like it's just a real win-win like proposition, just cost any way you're looking at it, right?
That's the way it's measured, and you can measure it by revenue. You can measure it by margin. You can measure it by prototypes, but all those things lead to efficiently, effectively getting to market faster to meet the demands of the customer, whether it's a consumer or whether it's a pandemic. In this case.
And so just, taking it a step further and maybe looking at some of the other industries you've worked with, do you have maybe just another example of what that could look like?
Yeah, there's another company, big company that we all know, Airbus, right? Yeah. So Airbus is one of these companies that uses our technologies in the systems area to describe their functional and their logical architecture of the airplane. And a lot of this goes back to avionics, right? Avionics is a part of the airplane that is driving the behavior. It's the software that's controlling the electronics and electrical systems. And so it's a really important part. And of course, not Airbus, but other news, we know what happens when you don't get the sensors appropriately connected to the software. And so Airbus is an example that they're using our capability to model that virtually. They're using our simulation capabilities also to simulate the results. And the simulation could be things like the computational fluid dynamics over the air, the wing, or it could be simulating the electrical load and the network throughout the wiring of the airplane. And so they're doing this, and how can they not only improve their product, but how can they do it in such a way that it is cost effective, they're on time, and they're meeting their business targets.
Yeah, those are excellent examples, and just kind of circling back to something that you were mentioning earlier about the IoT and the Internet of Things and the connectivity and the sensors and everything else that we're doing. So just to, I guess, real layman's terms here in my mind is basically working with Siemens, and what you're able to do is if you're modeling this, if you're getting it all done a lot faster, let's just say in a simulation versus building it, testing it, all the other things that would that come into play, let's say, of how it may have been done in the past, then you're going to save maybe some time, money, and you're going to get the product to market faster. So that's my layman's, or can possibly get the product to market faster, or fail and decide that maybe that wasn't the product you wanted to take. In my layman's term, am I kind of hitting the mark, or am I missing things?
You're hitting the mark. And in fact, we had there was a study done about ROI on digital transformation, and you're hitting exactly on the results that came out of that study. It talked about the demands for smart connected products, sustainability, disruption. And in that study, they looked at a measure of progressive companies and those that are lagging. And progressive companies were ahead in hitting their project revenue targets. They're ahead in hitting their margin goals, and they drastically reduce prototypes. So you're dead spot on in terms of what companies are seeing in terms of the benefit of going through digital transformation.
Yeah, it's great. It's just once you hear it, once you get it, once you understand it, it's like, why wouldn't you, right? Like that's my mind.
It seems so obvious, but again, there's the challenge that all these businesses have, and we all live it, is, okay, I have today to deal with. I have payroll, I have revenue targets. And while I'm doing this, I know that I need to transform my business. Yeah. It's just a hard problem. And that's why we get involved, because it's not an isolated fix. It's not a technology fix. It really needs to be something that is allowing you to have an improvement. Drop-in technology, sure, but the drop-in technology has to also be affected across the people and the processes that you're optimizing.
So I don't know if this is exactly a fair question, or if it's exact, but because I don't want to oversimplify this, because I know every company that Siemens work with and your team you work with, they're going to be different. They're going to all, different size, different complexity, different thing that they're bringing you on board to do. But I guess what I'm getting at is like, what could a user journey look like in terms of working with Siemens and working with your team? Because what you just now said a moment ago, not just digital transformation. That's what keeps businesses from doing things they need to do in every different end of things. It's like we have to deal with today, right? We know we need to do this, and this, but can we do it right now? Are we capable? Is this, priority? So that's the kind of the vein in which I'm asking that question is, what can a relationship with Siemens look like to go through and start using the processes?
Well, every customer is going to be a little bit different, and it could be different because of the industry they are in. It could be different because of where they are in the value chain of that industry, or it could be different because of where they are in their own market position or their own maturity. So we always say there's not a particular place that is the perfect starting point.
Yeah.
And in kind of the realm that I'm dealing with in terms of smart connected products, it's really going to be about this whole shift left mantra, right? How do I move from discovery late in my cycle to discovery and options choices early in my cycle? And that means that I need to have a virtual definition of my product designs, right? So at a minimum, I want to be capturing my product information so that those systems definitions, those interfaces between the hardware and software elements are represented. I can understand them. I can predict what the needs will be. I want to apply generative technologies where I can, in the engineering, let the software help me explore and understand alternatives. I want to bring simulation analysis in much early as possible, so I can evaluate and verify the path that I'm on. So these are the things that we're trying to help our customers bring into their design process. And then, of course, as we work our way through the manufacturing, the release, there's other elements of how we can help them.
So you mentioned the Siemens accelerator a little bit earlier, and I want to go further into that. So tell us a little bit more about the accelerator overall.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, accelerator, and what we're doing is to turn today's ideas into tomorrow's products, and part of that is the digital twin. And the digital twin, as I think I was referring to, helps me create new insights. It allows me to interrogate and evaluate in a virtual world both the operation and the physics-based simulation. And then to bring that to life is our accelerator portfolio. And the accelerator portfolio combines our software, our services, and the application development platform to do that. But the digital twin is key. The digital twin is the representation of all of those models in a connected single source of truth, single source of information. And then we bring onto that the ability to personalize the solutions. I mentioned low code earlier. Yeah. It allows us to adapt that into the customer's context by industry, by their particular situation. And then we operate in a connected ecosystem where, it's a landscape that's so broad. There's not one, I don't think there's one company that can say, I'll just drop in a solution. It really is a complex ecosystem. So you have to be open. You have to be around standards. And so we work with companies to enable a tool chain, a value chain that could be, a mixture of different tools along that value chain.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, Tim, I'll tell you one thing. I've learned quite a bit today, not just about Siemens, but just the industry overall. And then having your vantage point from where you started to where we're at now, that exponential curve that you mentioned, sensors, where we're going with that. I mean, whole lot to process here today, but all of it excites me because I feel like just the more, especially when you think about things like the accelerated digital twin, all things you're doing. If companies can bring, like using your example of maybe the vaccine, if companies can bring something to market sooner, cost less, fail faster, like all the things that you're helping companies accomplish, it seems like innovation, the rate with innovation, I don't know if it'll take the exact same curve, but it seems possible, right? Like the rate of innovation can measurably increase in different industries.
Yeah, and I think people don't understand how fast it is already occurring. Some examples are like in another part of the news, supply chain, right? Supply chain is another good example. And already today, autonomous trucking is active. So As much as you hear in the news, autonomous vehicles, there are certain parts of the United States where already autonomous transfer is occurring to help the supply chain. And it's needed because that's another statistic that we're so short on the humans to drive the vehicles. We must have autonomous in order to meet our demands of supply chain.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that. Thank you, Tim. I'm sitting here thinking about how did I not know that autonomous trucking is already taking place? So no, this is awesome. So Tim, just have to say, really, it's been great getting your insight today. So what's next? I mean, what's next for you? What's next for Siemens? What's next?
Well, for myself and everyone out there, I would say follow the mantra, adapt, evolve, and learn, because standing still is not an option. Standing still, you're being left behind. So adapt, evolve, learn, move forward. Turn complexity into competitive advantage. It is something that you have to embrace. The other part we're moving forward with is, software as a service. How do we take all this stuff, all this technology, all this capability, and cloud is the mantra as well. How do we make that available to everyone, not just the big enterprise companies, but even the smaller companies that need the same kind of capability? Mm-hmm. And then how do you push that out to edge computing? Because that's the next thing coming. So it's really, again, it's never done. I could be sitting here 10 years from now with the same level of excitement and energy about the growth and complexity, because I believe 10 years from now, it's still going to be this rocket ride that we're on. Is still going to be a very rapid move forward and innovative society that we're in.
I think you worded that right. This rocket ride we're on. I feel it. It's good, and more to come. If somebody's watching this and they want to learn more, they want to connect with you and your team, what's the best way for them to do that, Tim?
Well, you can find more information on our website. It's sw.siemens.com. We also have an event coming up. Find that, just similar website, events.sw.siemens.com. And of course, find me on LinkedIn. We have a lot of podcasts. Search for Siemens Podcast. You'll find a lot of information to learn from. And again, the simplest way is sw.siemens.com.
Fantastic. And for everybody watching this, we'll put all that information in the show notes so that you can just click on the link and head right on over and check out Tim and his team. And for the audience, if this is your first time tuning into Mission Matters, we're a platform that's all about bringing on entrepreneurs and executives that really have something to share, that are out there in the marketplace, making a difference. And if that's the type of content that you're into, we definitely encourage you and invite you to hit that subscribe button, because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Tim, really, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it. Thank you.